All right, I am here today with a good friend of mine, Mr. Trayson Woods. Trayson has been in leadership and service at our church for a while now. So, Trayson, tell us about like where you lead in church and like what that involves and how long you've been doing it. So, go ahead.
Yeah. So can you say that one more time? You break it up a little bit.
Yeah, where have you?
I don't know if it's you or me.
What all areas do you lead in at church, and how long have you been doing that, and what all does that entail?
Oh, yikes. I've been in a lot of different things. So probably the biggest one is youth. Like I'm a small group leader there, and then I've been doing that since 2019. Yeah, so like right as COVID hit, like then right after we came back, I've been in youth leading there with the students, and then also doing like the media stuff. Then I'm in kids church, and I'm in there, and I do most of the media stuff there. But also like if they need me to speak, then I'll speak or do whatever they need me to. I wouldn't say I'm leading, but I do the camera stuff, but I wouldn't say I lead there.
Hmm.
And then young adults,
Yeah,
like I've led different things there, where like different conversations or discussions, and yeah, so
yeah,
I've done all kinds of stuff.
yeah. Now, Trayson, I know this obviously just from knowing you and being good friends with you, but you are actually called into missions, correct?
Yes, I've called to missions. Yeah,
Yeah,
called to missions.
you and Alexis both feel that call in your life, and you guys are working towards that, correct?
Hmm.
That's
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
That's awesome. And do you feel like the Lord has kind of been preparing you for that, like by leading in all these different areas?
Yeah, he's definitely been preparing us in a lot of different ways. Where like even just figuring out, all right, what does discipleship look like, or what is relationship with uh, leaders and with students? Like, how does that fit into things? I think that missions is primarily relationship based,
Yeah,
and so if we can't do relationships well here, then we can't do them well anywhere really. And if we can do them really well here, then that same thing it transfers anywhere. So we've been trying to, be better about relationships and contacting people and talking to people. And we've been doing a lot of that stuff and hosting, especially like my family growing up, we didn't host people. Her family, pastor's kid, they host people all the time. So learning how to do that, how to be good stewards of time is kind of our biggest things right now. Of how do we do that effectively and be honoring to God with all that.
yeah. Do you ever find it difficult trying to manage your time in leadership? Because like you can be pulled so many directions. Do you ever find it difficult, like trying to manage all that time that you have or don't have?
Um, you kind of cut out, but from what I'm reading your lips, you're saying time with God versus time with people.
Well, like kind of managing your time, like because leadership pulls you a bunch of different ways. Um,
Yeah,
do you
yeah,
ever find that
managing time.
difficult? Yeah,
Yeah, it's kind of tricky.
yeah,
So like, if I did everything I absolutely could right now with church and with family and with everything, like I would be doing stuff Sunday morning, Sunday night.
hmm,
I'd be doing stuff Monday night, Tuesday night, every other Tuesday night, I guess. Every Wednesday, every Thursday night, every Friday, we do family stuff, and then Saturdays, once a month we do the cleaning of the road or whatever it is, and then back to Sunday again. So like, if we did everything, like we're not gonna be okay,
yeah,
because priority wise, like God comes first, time wise, that should be reflected in that. And then, my relationship with my family, like Alexis and I we're our own family unit. So the priority there is second. So it's like God first and then each other next, because when we're healthy with each other, ministry can happen and relationships can happen, and God can use each of us more effectively when we're together, rather than when we're having issues but we're involved with everything. That would be horrible.
yeah,
And then from there, then it's like, all right, church and friends, and and then works way later. But there are all a lot of big things, and so it's tricky to figure out that balance. But I think balance is not something that is necessarily attainable ever, really. It's just, all right, what is the most priority right now? And go with the priority and say, all right, if we're unbalanced, at least we're doing what is right and prioritizing God over everything else, and each other then, over, all right, I feel like I should do this, but also, right, I'm exhausted and can't find time. That's not going to be healthy either.
Yeah.
So
That's good. So, in leadership, Jesus talks about many times throughout the gospel how those in leadership, those who work for his name, are going to face challenges, right? Are you getting all that? Did that?
No, I'm trying to see, is it me or I don't know.
It might. I'm not sure. Here, I'll just say it again. Jesus talks about how we will face challenges by working and living a life for him. What are some of the challenges in leadership that we might face, and how would you combat those challenges?
Okay, how would I combat the challenges of living life for Christ?
Yeah.
Okay. I think a lot of the challenges is a lot of where your mind's at, and if your mind isn't in the right place, everything else is bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you can't focus on God, if you can't prioritize him mentally, then you're going to fall into every single temptation, right? And so there's kind of a two-parter with this of combating temptation, combating things that are coming against us. So one is all right, I can look at it as here's an opportunity to strengthen my character, like James talks about, or like Paul talks about. It's every single test thing, everything that comes at me, it's a chance to strengthen my character. But also, it's not very fun to think of it that way.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
If you think of it everything like that, then you go into a challenge mode of mentally of saying, all right, I can do this, and then you get into all these different things where you don't have to be doing it the hard way, but you are, because it's going to build my character. And so you kind of have to balance that, or find a good way of thinking about it where, all right, everything that comes against me, God has allowed me to face what I can face, what he knows that I can stand up under, right? There's scripture that talks about we won't be tempted beyond what we can bear, and we won't face trials and tribulations that are beyond what God can get us through. And as long as we trust him through all of it, whatever happens.
Yeah.
At a certain point, my dad was very famous for saying, what's the worst that could happen? And he, growing up, money was not great, life was not easy, and, he would go through this whole thing with my mom, a lot of, all right, one of them is freaking out over something, and it's okay, what's the worst that could happen? Okay, we lose, okay, I lose my job, what's the worst that could happen? What's worse than that? All right, well, I lose my job, what's that mean? I lose the house. If I lose the house, what's the worst that could happen? Either I die or I go on the street. What's the worst that could happen if I go on the street? I could die, or God could be incredibly faithful, and I could live my life in a completely changed way because God has shown he's faithful. So either way, we're getting back to this base level of, all right, God is faithful, and I'm going to trust in him, and if the worst that happens is I die, I get to be with God forever. Yeah. And if the worst that happens and God sees me through it, yeah, I have a story. God can get me through whatever. So, it's a lot about, I think trials and tribulations are, a lot of it is God's looking out for you, and he's giving you little bits so that when the big stuff comes, you can face it. But obviously, if your foundation is not in Christ, the big things, the bad things that happen, you can't say what's the worst that could happen. Oh, I'm going to spend time with God. You need to make sure your foundation with Christ is solid, and then whatever happens, it really is. What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah.
If that answers your question.
Yeah, that's really good, Trayson. So, in leadership, we obviously we don't seek it for the reward or for our own merit, but there is still some benefits and some good that we see come out of our leadership. What are some of the rewards that we might receive by leading people in church or whatever?
Yeah. So some of the benefits for me that I've seen in leadership is, a lot of it's community, right? So once again, growing up, I was homeschooled. So my only social or connection to people was, all right, church. So one of the biggest benefits is the relationships that I have with the pastors and with, even the board, even like the other team leaders, but then also the kids. Like I see relationship as value, right? And I truly believe that's the one thing that you can bring to heaven is the relationships that you build. And so I see that as the highest like honor and benefit that I ever get, but also reward wise, like I don't know, I feel really good when I have conversations with people and I see evidence of those conversations later. Like I've had so many conversations with different youth kids about whatever they're struggling with, which is, most of the time, guys, youth, you could probably figure it out. Like, and seeing them walk into freedom, that's a huge reward for me.
Mm-hmm.
Or seeing people like stepping out in their faith and actively doing stuff in their schools or getting excited about different things, like that's a huge reward for me. And having other people talk about me, say nice things about me, like, okay, sure, it happens every once in a while, but you're right, that's not why I do any of it. That's not the reward I'm looking for. Because ultimately, like, if you let people build you up, they also have the power to tear you down. And if your foundation is on people and what they say, it's pretty shaky ground.
Yeah.
So, allow God to use people to speak to you and through them to you, but also your foundation is not on what people say or what the credit that they give you is.
That's good. That's really good. All right, so Trayson, kind of my last question before we wrap this up. If you could what would be one piece of advice you would give to anyone who is entering into the world of church leaders?
We'll repeat it. You're completely gone. Hold on. There you go.
If you could say, what is one piece of advice that you would give to anyone who is entering into leadership in a church?
Okay. Yeah. One piece of advice I would give to anybody interested in doing leadership in the church or in general is, let's see, prioritize the people, Like, ultimately, why are you in leadership? Like, if you want to do leadership things, you need to have the reason. And if you have a big enough why, the how will figure itself out, right? If you have a big enough why, God can use you. God can work through you, As long as your foundation is right and you know why you do it, suddenly, if it's a money problem, it doesn't matter. If it's a communication problem, you're going to work at it harder because you know why you're trying to do it. If your reason for doing something is strong enough, what you're doing is secondary. What you're doing is not as difficult as it seems because your why is so big that, all right, God can use you in that. God can speak through you. God can overcome all these things. But even more, your firm foundation is it. When you know why you do what you do, it just works.
That's good. Well, Trayson, thank you so much for doing this. I not just because I'm your friend, but I always appreciate your knowledge and your insight on many things. So, thank you for doing this, man. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. It was super fun. Yes,
Alrighty.
I liked it.
Alrighty, thank you, sir.
If there was one more question.
Say what?
I'm trying to make sure you didn't say any more questions with that.
Nope.
Okay.
I think that's it.
Yes, I absolutely love this. Thanks for interviewing me.
Yeah.
Asking me questions. It's been fun. It's been a blast.
Heck yeah. All right, thank you, buddy. I appreciate you.
Yeah, no problem.